meeting for us, that we are going to do OSHA's most frequently cited standards. And so over the course of the next year, we are going to talk about different frequently cited standards. Todd, our speaker for today, has already offered to come back and say what they see in those different areas on occasion for some of those topics. So that's there we go. Okay, I think I can unmuted. Hopefully you can hear me. But the whole plan for the year is to bring you the standards that OSHA is citing folks on, and just like a 30,000-foot view of those, and how to make sure that your folks are safe and not getting injured from, not having all these standards in place, and trying to just prevent injuries all around. So with that being said, you make sure that you are on mute. Make sure, and that's down at the bottom left-hand corner. If you could keep your camera off, that would be very helpful. It's just going to save some bandwidth. And if you have any questions, or you want to make any comments, or you want Todd to address something more, go ahead and just type it in chat. And then as Todd sees it, or if the opportunity arises or at the end, then I will go ahead and bring that up, and we'll ask those questions. And we'll get you the answers, even if we have to get them for you later, so don't worry. This new program year, like I said, starts today, and we are continuing just like we had it for last year. We have virtual safety council meetings again. Now this year, like I said, we're doing OSHA Top 10, so we're going to have a little bit different kind of programming, but we're still going to mostly have our monthly meetings. Now there are going to be 2 months where we have a mega meeting, and the mega meeting will be done by actually the BWC, and it will be all the councils together. We're going to have 2 of those. We'll get you information for those as soon as we know them. But the rebate program is suspended, no CEO requirements, no attendance requirements, no semi-annual reports. But we're still working on bringing you guys the good programming. And we're also working through a new idea to do a little bit of networking and answering questions. So we'll keep you up on that one too. From a BWC standpoint, again, those of you that have just joined, Carrie Gray, safety consultant at the BWC. We are still virtual at this time, and they're looking at redoing some of our business models. So I think a lot of what we're going to do in the future is going to be virtual, but that's okay. And we're still here for you. And so if you need a program, if the stuff Todd's talking about today, and you're like, oh, I don't have a HAZCOM program, I have a HAZCOM program. I can walk you through it. We can help you. There's a lot of stuff that we can do, and we can do virtually, and we can figure it out. The other thing is, just like today's the start of the Safety Council program for the year, it's also July 1 is the start for a lot of our other programs. So the industry-specific program, that is just starting. There's a couple changes with that. So if you are in that program, touch base with whoever your consultant is. It may or may not be me. And there's a couple changes with any kind of virtual or on-site services that are going with that. Transitional work bonus, all these other programs, they're starting as of this month. So we are here. We're still doing webinars. So we have 2 webinars. You can see those down at the bottom. And Sally is great at including all the attachments for all of our webinars and all of our training and all of our material that's coming up. So that is right there. That is right at the bottom there, and Sally will get you those flyers. The one thing I wanted to bring up, just because it's relevant, in Ohio, it's kind of funny because we go through, it's like, I think 73 today, and it was 90 just the other day. I think it was 86 yesterday. And so we don't really have a lot of time for our bodies to acclimate to heat, and so we're more likely to have heat, illness, and injuries. So make sure your folks are trained on that. OSHA has a lot of really good material on that. You want to make sure that, you're watching your folks, you're taking action ahead of time, and you're prepared, just because it does fluctuate so much. But OSHA does have a lot of good material out there for you on that one. This one I wanted to bring up because I am hearing about this in some of my circles. A lot of this is coming out of Central Ohio, but this is something that is not necessarily been an issue in Ohio too much, but it's really been ramping up a little bit recently, and I'm hearing a lot from other consultants and other agencies. And so just be aware of the hazard of poison hemlock, and how it can be identified. To me, it was kind of freaky when I started looking into it because it looks like Queen Anne's lace. And it can look like some of the other stuff that we normally have in our yard. And a lot of times it's the second year where it's really getting bigger and potent. And if you have folks that do any kind of outdoor work or work, especially on the side of roads, this is something that we're starting to see a lot more in Ohio, and there can be a lot of issues with it. So just know that that's there. If you need any more information, send me an email. I'm going to be sending stuff. Sally's going to put that in the newsletter for this next month too. So know you'll get more on that one. I mentioned this the last two meetings, and OSHA, and I'm sure Todd's going to talk about this briefly too, but there is an emergency temporary standard for healthcare. It's out there. If you are in that industry, I'm sure by now you've already read it and you're an expert and probably could be given a presentation on it. But no, it's out there. They also updated the guidance for everybody else. So that's out there and that's ready for you. The last thing I have is our virtual classes. The training that we're doing is still virtual as well. And we have some classes coming up in August and September, and they will run, calendar year as well. Those are there. Sally will include that in the newsletter too. So keep an eye out for that. She has a great newsletter. Other BWC resources, we still have the videos, we still have the written programs, we still have the safety talk. So lots of stuff there and lots of stuff that we can help you with. So what you've been waiting for, and we know you're all very excited and probably on the edge of your seat. Today we have Todd Jenson, and he is we're getting the information today right from the horse's mouth, right, Todd? Not that we're calling you a horse, but we're getting it. So Todd is with the U.S. Department of Labor. He is actually with OSHA, and I'm going to let him give his own little bio and background. But if you could, everybody notice at the bottom of your screen, you have a reaction button. And if you click the reaction button, it gives you the opportunity to clap, and we can give Todd a warm Summit County Safety Council virtual welcome. I see a couple people doing it. Good stuff. And if you have any other feelings while he's presenting, use the reaction button. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Todd, and we look forward to it. Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot. Can you see my screen? Okay.
Yes, it is perfect.
My name's Todd Jenson. I work with OSHA, the Cleveland office, but I'm actually responsible for pretty much all the OSHA stuff north of Columbus. I'm a compliance assistant specialist, which means I do all the outreach, speeches, VPP audits, charge all the partnerships and alliances in Northern Ohio with various companies and organizations. I'm in charge of that too. I used to be a compliance officer for 21 years. I specialized in foundries, steel mills, chemical plants, refineries, process safety management, and so forth. And after 20 something odd years, I decided I wanted to do something different. So I applied and got the compliance assistance job out of Cleveland. So I do work for federal OSHA, but now I work real closely with BWC and on-site consultation and so forth, doing all the public outreach activities. So if you have any questions regarding OSHA compliance, the new COVID standard, and even the HAZCOM standard, whatever the questions may be, I put my email address here, and I also have my work phone number here. Even though we're not in the office, if you call this phone number and leave a message, that will go directly to our email. So I'll be able to see that and call you back. I've only been in the Cleveland office probably 4 times in the last year. And I think my desk consists of a phone located by the copy machine. So if you call that number, you can get a hold of me. And you can get a hold of me with that email address as well. All right. So Safety Council wanted me to give a little update here on, if I can figure out how to advance my slides here, on OSHA and talk about our top 10 citations and the emphasis programs we have right now. And I'm going to dip our toes a little bit into the COVID world and let you know what we're doing regarding COVID as well. So right now you're in Region 5 with federal OSHA. Region 5 is Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, and Michigan. And in Region 5, Wisconsin, Illinois, and Ohio are federal OSHA states. Michigan, Indiana, and Minnesota have their own state plan programs. So with OSHA, obviously we do inspections. That's what you hear about in the news all the time, and is OSHA inspection activity. But that's just one facet of what we do. Um, the less publicized things that we do a compliance assistance, outreach training. We assure abatement and so forth. So inspections are just one piece of the pie. There's a lot of other things that OSHA does out there, especially if you start getting involved in Susan Harwood grants and training grants and so forth. OSHA's got a lot of different aspects to it. Now, OSHA believes in a balanced approach. Obviously, we have to have enforcement. We have a compliance assistance. Then the third leg of the stool is training. OSHA does a lot of training out of our training institute in Chicago. And we also certify OSHA 10 and 30-hour training and instructors throughout the state of Ohio. So OSHA puts a lot of money and a lot of time towards training to get people up to date on our regulations. Because our citations are not designed to punish companies. Our citations that we write are designed to be a deterrent. We want people doing the right thing so they don't get, citations from us. So anytime that we can help someone come into compliance or help them improve their health and safety program, we're all for that. It makes the job site safer, and it also makes our job a lot easier. So our top 10 citations that we got, I'm counting them here, and I see 8. So I thought I had 10 here. Let's cover the top 8 citations instead of the top 10 citations. Fall protection in construction continues to be our number one hazard that we're seeing out there. And the reason for that is, number one, there's a lot of people not using fall protection, but if you're not using fall protection on a construction site, you're pretty visible, usually from a long ways away. So we see people on roofs. We see people erecting steel. We see people exposed to falls off bridges from a long ways away. And once we see that hazard, we can stop. But fall protection in construction is huge. We have a number of fatalities every year from people falling off various things, whether it's construction industry, if you can think of it, someone's fallen off it. So that's our number one. ASCOM is our number 2. HASCOM's been out for since 1985, maybe. It's been out a while, but still there's industries where we go into where we ask people, do you have a written HASCOM program? And they get the deer in the headlights look because they never heard of HASCOM. They don't know what it is. We still run into those facilities out there. So HASCOM's important. It requires SDS sheets to be capped, training on the chemicals, labeling. Those are the 3 major things. And so if you have chemicals in your facility, you need to make sure they're labeled properly. You got to make sure you have an SDS sheet for them and that you're training employees on those health hazards and how to protect themselves. Scaffolding. Scaffolding constructions are number 3. We run into a lot of scaffolding out there, but it's not just in construction. If you have scaffolding in your facility, in your factory or whatever type of business that you have, the scaffolding in the regulations for general industry now pretty much mirror the scaffolding requirements for construction. So if you have people working on scaffolding, you got to make sure the stuff's set up right. You got to make sure it's inspected, that it's being overseen by a competent person and so forth. Ladders are a big one. We still see people falling off ladders, tipping over. Ladder safety is huge. Number 5 here is lockout. If you have an amputation injury in the state of Ohio, you're required to call your OSHA office. And so we get in Cleveland, heck, we might get 5 or 6 amputation calls a week, maybe more than that, maybe 10 amputation calls a week. And I would wager to guess that out of those, let's say 10 amputations we have in Northeast Ohio every week, 90% of them are from lockout tagout. It's from someone working on a piece of equipment, not having it shut off properly and locked out, and that equipment starting up and taking an end of a finger off, or heaven forbid 2 fingers, or heaven forbid a hand. We're losing a lot of fingers in Northern Ohio, and it's almost solely related to lockout tagout. Another fall protection training is a big thing in construction. And general industry changed their walking working surfaces standard a few years back. And, you know, it pretty much mirrors construction now. So if you got guys or ladies exposed to falls and they're wearing fall protection harnesses, they got to be trained in how to properly wear those harnesses and how to hook off to anchorage points. So fall protection training is huge. Eye and face protection, both in construction and general industries, still a big problem. People not wearing safety glasses, not wearing face shields when they're using cutting tools and so forth. And then machine guarding here is number 8. Machine guarding, we get a lot of citations on machine guarding, a lot of hazards called in, a lot of accidents called in on machine guarding, whether it be a mechanical power press, you know, in this case, it's general machine guarding, it's not 217, but power presses, gears and sprockets, conveyor belts, just general point of operation guarding. If you got machines out there and they're moving and someone can get a finger or an arm in that machine while it's moving, it needs to be guarded. And a lot of the times where we go out on amputations, the first thing out of the employer's mouth is, we can't believe someone would be so stupid to stick their hand inside that machine while it was running. We get that a lot. And who knows the reason why people stick their hands inside of equipment. Maybe this thing it's going to be a quick little in and out, and they can get that piece of material out of there real quick, or unjam that conveyor, or whatever it may be. The thing starts up, next thing you know, they've lost a finger or two. So machine guarding is big. And if you have any type of machine guarding questions, or you think you have a machine that you can't guard, you can't figure out how to guard it, get a hold of me. We'll talk about it. Maybe you can send me some pictures or something, and we'll figure out a way to get those machines guarded. Oh, another thing is, if you call me with a question regarding any type of OSHA regulation or hazard or what have you, I don't turn you into the compliance folks or anything like that. If you have a question with me, I'll handle that issue with you one-on-one. So, okay, Region 5 here. Here's our recent fatality table that I got about 2 weeks ago. And fatalities are down for 2021 versus 2020. And in 2020, we had a lot of COVID fatalities, a lot of healthcare people dying in 2020 due to COVID. 2021 so far this year has been significantly less fatalities. If you look at the table there on the left, it kind of breaks it down so far for 2021. Caught in electrocution, exposures, falls, fire and explosion, struck bys, trench cave-ins. Thank God we haven't had any trench cave-in fatalities in Region 5 yet this year. We've had 5 COVIDs that have been reported to us so far this year. But exposures, 39 exposures. I don't know what the exposure means. That's a pretty vague term. But our total here for the year is 62 fatalities, according to this table. Calendar year up at the top here, looks like 89 so far, just in federal, 47 in the states. So we've had quite a few fatalities, but we are actually down year after year so far. 2017, we had 120. 2018, we had 109. 19, we had 125. Like 2020, we had 257 fatalities. The majority, at least half of those were due to COVID exposures and fatalities with healthcare workers. And so far in 2021, we had about 89. So Ohio does account for a good majority of those fatalities. Illinois usually has the most because it's a more populous state. But that's what we have so far for fatalities so far in Region 5 and specifically in Ohio this year. So the types of inspections that OSHA has, we got 2 different kinds of inspections that we code. We have unprogrammed and programmed inspections, and they are exactly what they say here. Unprogrammed inspections, those are ones we don't anticipate. They just kind of pop up. That's our complaints, our fatalities, our media referrals, and so forth. Things that come into our office that we really have no control over. Those are what we call unprogrammed inspections. And then our programmed inspections that we do, those are the ones that we actually plan for. whether that be an emphasis program, a national emphasis program, local emphasis program, where a company is put on a list with other companies, and we actually plan those inspections in advance, and we go out and do those inspections. Those are called program inspections. We do have imminent danger inspections, fatality inspections that we do in complaints and referrals. Imminent danger, that's where something gets called into us or a picture gets sent to us, and we pretty much drop what we're doing and we go out on those inspections. That would be any trench or any type of fall hazard that's called in, and we would consider those imminent dangers. We have different types of inspection programs we have out there, like I said before, that'll put your company on a list. We have special emphasis programs. We have what we call site-specific targeting programs. Everyone's heard of the SST program. SST is site-specific targeting. So if you're on any of these emphasis programs that OSHA has out there, your company is put on a list based on your NAICS code. And what we do is we assign a random number to the list, and then we randomly select people off the list for inspections under these national emphasis programs or local emphasis programs that we have. And I'll talk about some of those here coming up. National emphasis programs that we have where your company could get put on a list would be our amputations, NEP, combustible dust, excavations. If you're a federal agency, you get an inspection. If you're dealing with hexavalent chrome, either with chrome plating is usually where we run into that, or lead. If you're a PSM site or a process safety management site, usually that's a chemical plant or a refinery, you are on a list for an inspection. If you deal with silica in the normal course of your business operations, you could be put on an emphasis program list for silica. We also have one for ship breaking, trenching, and COVID-19. And I'll get into the COVID-19 emphasis program here in a second. But this covers these national emphasis programs cover a large swath of American manufacturing. And just because you're on one of our inspection lists doesn't mean you're necessarily going to get an inspection, because some of these inspection lists have, tens of thousands of names on these lists. And we may only conduct 10 or 20 inspections out of those 10,000 companies. So just because you're on a list doesn't mean you're necessarily going to get an inspection, just because there's so many people on there and our staffing is limited. Effective July 6th, our COVID-19 standard went into effect. The COVID-19 standard is the first time we've issued what we call an emergency temporary standard, ETS. And what that means is it went into effect, and OSHA can pull this standard back at any time. And we will in the future pull this standard back, but I just don't know when. They're telling me 6 months, and some people say 9 months, but it's not going to stick with us forever. It will expire at a certain point in time in the future, but just be aware there is a COVID standard out there right now that came out, and it primarily targets the healthcare industry. And the reason it targets healthcare and not other industries is that during COVID in 2020 and even 21, we saw a large number of fatalities, COVID related, in the healthcare industry. And so that's why the healthcare industry is targeted. We had some fatalities in warehousing. We had some fatalities associated with manufacturing, meat packing, food manufacturing, but nothing compared to what we saw in the healthcare industry. So that's why healthcare is covered by this new COVID standard. It was the industry that needed the standard. So that went into effect July 6th. And I just have a couple slides here on the COVID-19 standard. I'm going to be doing a presentation with the Ohio Healthcare Association tomorrow on COVID-19 standard, and we'll get into more in depth on this with the presentation tomorrow with OHCA. But just be aware there is a COVID standard out there, and if you are in healthcare, you might want to start looking into this regulation just to make sure that you get a program in place and you get folks trained up and you get the different aspects of this thing set up so your folks are protected. The good thing with the COVID-19 standard is if you're already following CDC guidelines, you're probably already complying with 70 to 80% of this regulation already, and you don't even know it. So just a brief overview, the COVID-19 standard covering healthcare, you have to have a written plan. There has to be procedures in place for patient screening and management of those patients. There has to be transmission-based precautions put in place. Protective equipment has to be provided. There has to be specific procedures for aerosol generating procedures. Physical distancing and physical barriers, there's a requirement for that in certain situations where people can't physically distance, such as at nursing stations. There's a requirement for cleaning and disinfection. There is a ventilation requirement, health screening and medical management of employees. There is a vaccination section in the COVID-19 standard. We're not making vaccinations mandatory, but there is a vaccination section in there that talks about other things regarding vaccinations. There's obviously employee training on the new COVID-19 standard. There's a section in there about retaliation. I'm not aware of OSHA ever printing a standard and it specifically talks about retaliation. There may be something in our lead standards and so forth, or substance specific standards that we have, but this standard specifically has a section for retaliation about what you can and can't do with employees. The requirements of the COVID-19 standard have to be implemented at no cost to the employees. There's a record keeping section, and then there's also a section that requires the reporting of any COVID-19 fatalities and hospitalizations. You got to report those to OSHA. So that's just it in a nutshell on that COVID-19 standard. Like I said, if you're following CDC guidelines, you're probably already following 70 to 80% of this regulation. But if you're out there in healthcare, it would do well to either get a hold of me or get a hold of BWC or OSHA on-site consultation and let us help you answer any questions that you may have. In addition to the, yes.
We do have a question that came up, and it's actually kind of what we were talking about before we started the meeting. Pam asked, will this standard be extended to EMS?
I don't know. I'm gonna have to check on that. There's a lot of, I have to check in the scope of that standard to see if it covers EMS. Because there's other questions like, does it cover dietary staff going into patient rooms? Does it cover social workers that are going into COVID positive patient rooms? Does it cover home? To what degree does it cover home health care? So I would have to check into that and get back to you. If you can just get that person's information, or I can get back to you with the answer on that, and you can forward to that person, I'd appreciate it.
Definitely, I will do that. Thanks.
Yeah, like I said, I've been through 3 training sessions on this COVID-19 standard, and it makes your head spin. So there's just so many variables and so many different types of situations that you run into. I'd really have to dig into the scope of the standard to get an answer for that, but I'll get an answer for that. There is a national emphasis program on COVID-19. And if you are within certain NACS codes, chances are your company is put on a list. And then what we're going to do is randomly select people off that list for a COVID-19 inspection to make sure that you're following the standards and following CDC guidelines. The emphasis, your name gets put on that list if you're in certain industries. And these are industries that we've found a high degree of COVID-related illnesses in 2020. Let's see here. I think I got some NACS code lists here. Pretty much healthcare. If you're in healthcare, chances are your company is on a list. And then whether we randomly select your name off that list or not is just a matter of chance based on randomness. But just be aware you are on a list if you're in healthcare. Meat processing, poultry processing, supermarkets, warehousing, temporary help services. There's a lot of NACS codes with a lot of businesses that cover probably about 75% of the people on this call. food manufacturing. There's some construction companies on here. The list continues. Okay. Pretty, like I said, it's going to cover a large swath of American manufacturing to get your name on this COVID emphasis program. But let's say hypothetically, we got 100,000 companies on this COVID list, right? You know, OSHA only may be doing 20 or 30 inspections off that list, and 20 or 30, that's just a number I'm throwing out there. So even though you are in one of these next codes, you are on the inspection list for COVID-19 inspections, the likelihood of us actually getting out to your site's fairly low. But you still need to make sure that you're complying with CDC guidelines. And if you're in healthcare industry, please make sure you're complying with our COVID standard. And if you're complying with CDC guidelines and our COVID standard, even if we come out there and you're part of a COVID inspection, you should be in good shape as long as you're following the guidelines. Okay, other emphasis programs. We have emphasis programs on fall hazards in general industry and construction. So if we see someone exposed to a fall while we're driving down the road, we do have the authority to stop on that site and open an inspection and stop that unsafe behavior. We have emphasis programs on grain handling facilities, powered industrial vehicles, and anytime we're doing any building rehab or gut rehab on construction sites, if we see buildings being rehabbed, we have the authority to stop and open inspections on those gut rehab projects we see happening throughout little towns all through Ohio. Just let me touch on record keeping real quick. Remember, record keeping covers you. You're covered by record keeping actually if you have more than 10 employees. And we need to make sure that we got our OSHA logs up to date, okay? If you have a fatality or you have an employee that suffers an amputation, we need to make sure that you report those amputations and those fatalities to OSHA, all right? Like I said, we get a lot of amputations reported to us every week. Some of the amputations, we actually go on site and we do an inspection. Some of them we don't. Because believe it or not, some of these amputations that happened are really freak occurrences. Sometimes you just got to shake your head at some of these accidents and say, how the hell did that happen, right? But some of them are more straightforward machine guarding, lockout, tag out type things. So regardless, if you have an amputation or hospitalization and it's work related, you're required to call us and notify us. And then we'll determine whether or not we want to do an inspection or not on that accident. Remember to keep your OSHA 300 logs up to date. Fill out your OSHA 301s. The BWC form for the first report of injury. That is the equivalent to our injury form. So if you're doing one, you don't have to do two different forms. Okay, just to let you know, we do have a website with a lot of resources on it. If you have Spanish-speaking employees, there's a lot of our pamphlets and a lot of our training materials are also developed in Spanish. So if you do have Spanish employees, please take advantage of our Spanish language section of our website for those Spanish-speaking employees. I'm trying to think what else we got here. I talked about the hospitalizations, amputations. Fatalities must be reported within 8 hours. And if you have a fatality or an amputation, you can call either your local OSHA office or you can call the 1-800 OSHA number, or you can report that online and it'll be transferred to our office to investigate. Just a reminder, it is against the law to discriminate against anybody for raising concern about unsafe working conditions. If someone raises a safety concern to you, or they participate in OSHA inspection, or they request protective equipment, you can't retaliate against that employee for raising any health and safety concerns. If you have a question on what you can and can't do, give me a call and I'll work you through the process. I always tell folks when it comes to retaliation, you just don't want to throw gas on the fire. Okay, so just be aware of that. We have a lot of discrimination complaints that we're investigating all the time in Region 5. And I think they're going to be hiring like 5 or 6 more discrimination investigators because we have so many of these complaints that we're looking into. Examples of retaliation are reducing pay or hours, firing, laying off, suspending, reassigning, disciplining, and demoting, harassing, threatening, intimidating, blacklisting from hiring. All these are ways an employer can get in trouble by discriminating against an employee for raising a health and safety concern. So let's see. I think that's just about it. Oh, let me talk real quick about OSHA on-site consultation. OSHA on-site consultation is there for you as well as BWC. If you have any safety and health concerns, give your BWC or OSHA on-site consultation rep a call. They are free of charge for you, and they can help develop safety programs, conduct training for your employees, conduct site audits. It's a great resource, and a lot of small employers don't know about these resources. So definitely call BWC or on-site consultation if you have any questions, and get them in there to help you come into compliance with things before the OSHA inspector knocks at your front door. OSHA does have a number of alliance programs. We have alliance with various construction companies in the state of Ohio. We have partnerships with various companies. We also have what do we call our VPP program. Some of you may be in BWC's SHARP program. And the SHARP program is a good program to get your health and safety program online, get it up and rolling. If you succeed at the SHARP level, then we always encourage companies to look into applying for VPP. That stands for Voluntary Protection Programs. And VPP is the companies that are in VPP and have that certification are the best of the best when it comes to safety. A lot of larger companies are in VPP, and then we also have some smaller companies that are in VPP too across Northern Ohio. And it's bragging rights is what it is. You get to fly a VPP flag in front of your facility, use it on your company letterhead. We typically have a real close working relationship with companies that are in VPP, a lot of information sharing back and forth. Because they have good safety programs. They care about their people. And if you're going through the motions, you might as well get the recognition for it. So if you believe that you can qualify for VPP, I'd be more than happy to take your application for that program, and we'll get you in the VPP family. We also have the OSHA Challenge program. And like I said before, we have BWC OSHA Onsite has the SHARP program as well too. I talked about these a little bit. We talked about the top 10. Let's see here. We talked about falls. These are more for construction. Let's see here. Heat stress. We talked about heat stress a little bit. We are in the dog days of summer. So be aware of heat stress. If employees they're sweating heavily, they have weakness, they look cold or pale or clammy, they have fast pulse, muscle cramps, dizziness, nausea or vomiting or fainting. Any of these can be a symptom of heat stress or maybe even heat stroke. So be aware of this. We always recommend more frequent breaks. We recommend fans in the workplace and also water being available. Heat stress is a big problem. We always have at least one fatality, a heat stress fatality every year in Ohio. It's usually in the construction industry, but it can really be anywhere. So just be aware of these symptoms and be aware that your employees may be struggling out there, especially when it starts getting hotter here in August and September. We talked about trenching a little bit. We talked about Spanish language on our website. OSHA does have an online app you can download on your electronic device. It gives you updates, what we call quick takes. It keeps you up to date on OSHA regulations and what we're doing nationwide. What kind of citation we're issuing to various companies and so forth. So the app on your phone is something that I've seen quite a bit out there. and it's definitely worth taking advantage of. Other than that, I don't have any more things to talk about. I think that's a pretty good OSHA update. Top 8, top 10 citations, our emphasis programs that we have out there. Any questions in the chat at all?
I am not seeing any. I just posted. If anyone has questions,
Okay.
Go ahead and type those in the chat. We'll give you just a second or two. Again, keep in mind that we will be talking about the top 10 over the course of the year, so that's exciting. And another exciting thing that we're going to be doing this year is we're going to give away a gift card, a $25 gas gift card. We all need that right now because the gas prices have gone up. So just like we used to do at the in-person meetings. So our lucky winner of today, and Sally took all the folks and put them in a random number generator, all the folks that were on here. And Ryan Helton from S&B Metals, you are our winner today. So Sally will send you out a $25 gas card. If you just want to let us know that you're still here, Ryan, in the chat, that would be helpful. But you are the winner for today. I am not seeing any questions, which I'm shocked. I am shocked. All right. Question. Let's see. There, I do got one. So, do on-site compliance audits in municipal departments, such as street departments? So, I guess the thing to keep in mind is if you're a public entity, you're going to fall under PERP rather than OSHA, the Public Employer Risk Reduction Program. So that would be them doing the audits. And I don't know, Todd, do you know if I haven't heard that they've adopted the temporary standard. Not saying they couldn't do visits on that.
What the standard? What standard exactly?
It says, do you do on-site compliance audits at municipal departments such as street departments? And I know that would be PERP, not you guys, if it's like a city. Okay. So to answer Holly's question or Jill's question on that, no, OSHA doesn't come to a city or a county or a school. That's going to be PERP, the Public Employer Risk Reduction Program. They're your OSHA, basically. I do have another question on here. Compliance dates for the emergency temporary standard are pretty tight. Thoughts on that potentially changing or the standard itself getting extended?
They're not going to extend it. They published the emergency standard in June. I think it was like 26th or something like that. And then they gave 2 weeks before it went into effect. So since it's an emergency standard, they're not giving the typical 1 year or 6 months like they normally do. They only gave 2 weeks. But we've been told on this emergency standard not to nitpick people, right? We're gonna be looking for the employers that aren't doing anything, or they're not doing very much at all. So if you're really trying to comply with this standard, we're not going to go through your program with a fine-tooth comb and nitpick you on this stuff. We want to make sure you got the big stuff done and that you're protecting employees. But we're not going. We've been told not to nitpick on this thing. So, like I said too, if you're following the CDC guidelines, you're probably following 70% of this thing already. So, but yeah, it is in effect, and they can't extend the effective dates out. It is what it is. So, one thing on PERP. Like Carrie said, they do cover public and sector employees. They cover universities, public schools, municipalities. OSHA doesn't have jurisdiction over state institutions, but we do have jurisdiction over private colleges, federal prisons. If you have a police or fire department that's a contractor, we would have jurisdiction over them. So there is a fine line between federal jurisdiction and state jurisdiction over a lot of these institutions, but there is a line that's there. And PERP is out there. PERP stands for Public Employees Risk Reduction Program. And they're under BWC? Yes,
they are in our bucket.
Yeah, and they will be the ones that come out and shake the stick at you if you're a municipality. Now, there's been times I've stopped and I've seen municipalities doing trenches and stuff. They're 10 foot deep and no trench box. And I'll stop. I won't do an inspection, but I'll stop and tell them to get out of the trench. And I'll get a hold of the manager for the city and tell them what's going on. We're not going to just drive by a hazard and not do anything about it just because we don't have jurisdiction. We'll still stop. If we got city employees running down the road with two guys in the front bucket of a front loader hanging Christmas tree ornaments, we're going to stop and tell them not to do that. But we don't have jurisdiction over you, but that would be perp, and we would make a phone call to them.
Absolutely. And I do see Susan had put in the chat that the folks that she talked to a compliance officer at PERP last week about some other stuff, and they are working on adopting the emergency temporary standard for COVID for those who it would apply. So that would be potentially, if you're under PERP, look for that coming down the road as well. So I am not seeing any other questions. If anyone else has other questions, I did see Ryan, you are still here. So Sally will send you your gas card. And next month, our meeting is August 18th. It's either going to be Ladders or HAZCOM. We're working through between two different speakers right now. But again, it's going to be these top 10 topics that Todd touched on that are the most frequently cited standards. And again, we want to keep people safe from having issues in those standards. So we're going to work through that. So unless there's any other questions, everybody gets out a few minutes early and you can enjoy the rest of your day. We're really excited that you're here. Excited to bring back the winter program. Absolutely. I see somebody clapping. So if you could go ahead and give Todd a nice, again, thank you. Summit County Safety Council, thank you. Look at all those clapping. They're all over the screen. So that's wonderful. Thank you guys. We appreciate it. And everybody have a